Test, 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 test.
Test, 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 test. Salut! Hello there. I'm going to start with the bad news so that everything afterwards is great. The bad news is that there is no live stream, in the sense that there is a live stream, but it's crappy. You can blame Windows. I'm running Windows over there. You can start blaming now. Right. On to the good news. So the best good news on the list of good news is that a kind volunteer called Silvio has extracted the good bits out of each and every Security Espresso meetup recording that we've had on YouTube thus far. So now you can find all of them nicely indexed on YouTube with the author and the name of the presentation and just the good bits, right? Not all the parts where Anatol and myself run around in a frenzied state, just the good bits. So thank you, Silvio, wherever you are, if you're watching this. I know the quality is crappy, but thank you. All right, onwards. You might have already been fed up to hear that we have a Patreon, and if you want to keep the pizza coming, we would really appreciate your donation. Beyond that, the CTF season is upon us, with summer coming around. I think the Facebook CTF has already started, and in case you missed that one, the DEF Camp qualifiers will start soon. So, you might know we also have a CDF group, right? It has its own Telegram page. It's just as open as the Security Espresso Telegram page. You can come in, discuss, we make teams and play CDFs together and discuss challenges. And most important of all, there are write-ups to the coolest challenges played up to this point, written by our kind members. So, the CDF group is called Je me peux coffee. Come on in. All right, last bit. I would like to know how many of you are here for the first time. Raise of hands. All right, I have no idea who brought y'all, but you're gonna tell me. Welcome, welcome. So, last but not least, if you haven't, patched your Windows 7 and XP for the ReDP exploit and also updated your WhatsApp, you're brave, brave soldiers for coming here without updating WhatsApp. That's all I'm saying, right? All right. I can see some of you scrambling for your phone. That's a good thing to do right now. Yeah, update WhatsApp. There's Wi-Fi. It's fine. Our first speaker of the evening is Lavinia Dinko, who is also here for the first time, and we thank her for having the guts and the good nature to come on board. I've actually met her at the conference called Lazies in Cybersecurity, or as someone put it to me last time, I spoke over at the girls' room, because there was a big queue at the boys' room, and it's usually cleaner. So Lavinia told me a few things about her, such as the fact that if there's some place you can visit, if there's something you can climb, and if you can jump from it, she's there, right? So suggest mountaintops and hot air balloons over there. And bungee jumping, right. And also a fun fact that I've also heard reminded by one of her colleagues is that she got maximum grades in the music class just so she would stop singing. So if she breaks out into song, you all know where the emergency exits are. And with that, I will give her the microphone.
Thank you. Where is the presentation here? Okay, this is old school, okay? Thank you. Let's see. Okay, I'm Lavinia Dinka. I'm going to present biometric spoofing in the context of biometric key derivation. I know big words, no worries. We'll get down to them. So what I'm going to talk in this presentation, first I'm going to present a little bit of context, why the current PKI system might change and what's the new vision for it. Then I'm going to do a short introduction into biometrics. And then we're going to talk about the main topic, biometric key derivation in the context of spoofing attacks. And of course, at the end, conclusions. If you are interested in this topic, you can find more information. It's part of my PhD thesis that I did in Hong Kong at City University at Hong Kong. And you can find the thesis online. You can download it if you are interested in more information about the topic or related topics. The thesis is on cryptography, biometrics, behavioral biometrics, so on and so forth. So a little bit of context. Why we need to change the PKI system? What's the problem with it? The Digital Access Index, it's basically a measurement by the World Bank in which they say, okay, how many enterprises, how many world nations are introducing ITC and how many of them are adopting it. Many nations are thinking to introduce digital certificates for small to medium enterprises. Why is that? They want to make them aware, introduce the tax returns online. Now, you say, okay, this is great, we need this. I, as a EU citizen, I want to file my tax reports online. Then I will need this digital certificate, and that's okay. That is fine. The problem is that we are going to introduce million and million of certificates to users that they don't know what to do with them. Now, the problem is that we as security people, we might be cautious about what we are doing with our private key. Like, I don't know, maybe we have the token with us. But lots of enterprises won't do the same thing. If we have a small, medium enterprise, most of them might be, I don't know, small entrepreneurs, and they have nothing they don't know anything about IT, and basically they will just put that certificate or the token in a drawer. Why is this important? Well, I'm pretty sure everyone knows about Stuxnet by now. It is the first official recorded cyber weapon. The virus was used, well, people say that it was used by the United States and Mossad. These are the rumors anyway. Nothing is confirmed. It was used to basically stop Iran's nuclear program. And they managed to stop it with this virus. Now, what is very interesting about this is that what they did, they went and first they stole some private keys from a company, and then they used it to sign the virus with a legitimate certificate that they stole. They stole the private keys. Then the virus went into the wild. It started infected Iranian companies, and no one knew. Well, then someone found out. Google started publishing the list like another companies and said, okay, this is a virus. And what the attackers did, no worries, we can handle it. They changed the signature of the virus, and they signed it with another certificate that they had stolen. So basically, they had lots of certificates that they have stolen. The private keys, they have stolen them from genuine companies that they didn't know they lost their certificates. So, and it took them a week from the initial, so when someone reported it, it took them 1 week to sign another certificate. So they were ready, they already had these certificates. It was no question about it. It's not like they went and, oh, let's steal another one. No, they had that. That was it. Now, a few years ago, 3 root CAs were penetrated. A Global Sign, DigiNotar. The thing is that DigiNotar lost its root CA private key. So what happened, they didn't know about it, and hackers used that private key to issue 531 rogue certificates. You cannot know about this because basically they used the CA's private key. It was a root CA private key. The minute they found out, they kept it. They do whatever citizen will do. They kept it under wraps. I mean, why would you tell the people that what has happened? No, you keep it for yourself. Then when Google found out and they started publishing the thing that, look, it's happening, this CA was penetrated, it was too late. Now DigiNotar is bankrupt. They filed for bankruptcy and it's not trusted by any other browser. But what I'm my point here is that it took time until you found out what has happened, you revoke all the certificates, lots of people don't update their things, their browsers, and so on and so forth. So why are private keys important? Private keys are important because there is an increased need of security. How I said, attacks on PKI can be divided into external attacks, counterfeiting the public key or stealing the private key, and internal, which means, first one, the problem is the user that doesn't take care of his private key, and weak encryption keys. Now, you might argue that counterfeiting the public key, okay, we have a mechanism for that. Basically, when you visit a site, the browser will tell you, hey, this certificate, it's not from who it appears to be, or it's expired. But just out of curiosity, who actually checks that? Or, I don't know, let's say, okay, ignore that, let's go forward, I want to visit the site. You check that? I'm very glad to hear that. That's good. But we are security people, okay? We're supposed to do this. And another thing is that, let's be honest, some sites have their certificates expired and they never ever issue them again. I mean, they reissue the certificate, but they don't do it on time. It's like, okay, I'll do it when I'll have time. It's not a priority for us. Okay, this is standard PKI. So let's say I want to send Alexandra a message. I am going to encrypt the message with her public key, and she can decrypt it with her private key. Well, let's imagine a world where we can use PKI without storing any keys. We don't need to store private keys. Would be that be great? How about we always have the key with us, and we don't need any other additional device? How will that be? Research into PKI, basically it's demonstrated that you can always generate the keys by using biometrics. What would change in the system? You see, it's the same standard PKI system. The only thing that will change is that the user will present his biometrics, let's say fingerprint and iris. And from these biometrics, the keys will be derived every time, the public and the private key. So the private key, it's never stored. Now, before I'm going to explain how such a system will work and how the problems with implementations are, I'm going to do a short introduction to biometrics. There are multiple types of biometrics: hard biometrics or physical biometrics that are considered face, hand, blood vessels, voice, and ocular biometrics, meaning iris and the retina. Behavior biometrics or soft biometrics are keystroke pattern, signature, gait, or voice. You can see that voice, it's in, let's say, both worlds, because you have the hardware, your vocal cords, that's basically the hard part of the biometrics. And then you have the behavioral one, the way you speak, the way you phrase, the way you pace yourself. This is the behavioral part from the voice biometrics. The term multi-biometrics refers to using at least two sources for biometrics. Don't think that it's two different sources. If I have, let's say, my left index and my right index, these are two for fingerprints. These are two sources of biometrics. You can even have two different sources from one fingerprint if you use two different sensors. Let's say you use the normal sensor and a thermal sensor. Then you have two sources from the same trait. So this is multi-biometrics. Biometric spoofing, it's the fancy word of saying faking biometrics. How does the biometric process work? So I, Lavinia, going to present my fingerprint to the sensor. Then the feature extraction process will begin. The matcher will match what the features with the stored template, and then the decision is made. I haven't presented the enrollment stage, in which the enrollment stage basically creates the stored template. Now, let's talk a little bit about fusion. Why do you need fusion? If we use two sources of biometrics, we need to fuse the information from these two sources. In the biometric world, fusion is done basically is divided in two parts. We can have fusion before matching and fusion after matching. What does that mean? If we have fusion before matching, we have sensor level fusion. That means that it's the same example that I have given you. I present my fingerprint, and I use two sensors, one normal sensor and a thermal sensor, and I can basically match I can, sorry, fuse this information from the both sensors to get a more accurate image of the fingerprint. Also, we have feature level fusion. Feature level fusion, you extract the features, let's say, for fingerprint and the features from iris, and you obtain a vector. And then you fuse this vector using fusing techniques. Now, if you want to know, most commercial applications use after matching biometrics. What does that mean? Basically, they do, let's say we have fingerprint and iris. I have the fingerprint matcher. For score, I will get a score from, let's say, 1 to 10. If it's 9, it means that, okay, the sample passed. And then for iris, I also get a score in the, and then if it's 9, it also passed. In the case of rank, I will have a rank, 1, 2, 3. This is ranking. And then decision level is yes and no. Now, some code systems were caught up being, let's see, a little bit tricky. So they used two, let's say, fingerprint and iris. But basically, when they did the fusion, they said, OK, if one sample passed, it's an authentication. Like, OK, why are you using my multi-biometrics here? So what are the problems with biometrics? First, biometric data is not secret. You can follow someone and literally leave the fingerprints or take pictures in a mall with those crazy cameras that we have even on the smartphone. So you can acquire biometric data from a person without him knowing. Another problem is revocation. I'm pretty sure you all have seen those movies with chopped fingerprints and stuff like that. So if you lose your fingerprints, like someone cracks the template and it's up there, theoretically, you shouldn't be able to use that trait or that fingerprint. And tracking. Tracking means that if you have, let's say, a fingerprint of the same user, you can track the user across databases. Then, of course, we have template protection schemes. We cannot store the biometric data in clear. It's obvious. So we have cancelable biometrics. From cancelable biometric side, we have biometric salting. It's exactly as password salting. And non-invertible transform, it's exactly as password hashing. I'm doing parallels with something that you might know. The template protection also has biometric crypto systems. What does that mean? Basically, I extract from the fingerprint a key, and then I'm using that key to encrypt the template, and I'm storing the template in the database. That is key binding schemes. There are also key generation schemes that only extract a certain key from the template, and they only store the key in the database. The template won't be stored in the database. OK, let's go back here and see what we are doing with this. So I said that we have a new vision for PKI, or where we do not store the private key, and the key is derived every time. So what do we want to answer? Is this system viable? Do we have, let's say, if we use multimodal biometrics for key derivation, we will have more security than using one single trait, sorry. Is it biometric key derivation safe if we, let's say, fake biometrics? And what are the problems with this type of systems? So what's the current state of the key derivation? There are two types of PKI system nowadays that use biometrics. The first type is traditional PKI with a layer of encryption on the token. So basically, the token that stores the private key has, let's say, a fingerprint sensor. The problem with that, it's not more secure. Au contraire, because it doesn't have liveness detection system, so you don't know if it's a live fingerprint. You can actually introduce less security than, I don't know, having a PIN. That's why you should use both, like the biometric layer on the token and the PIN when you use the biometric key. Actually, it shouldn't be a pin, it should be a passphrase, but we all know what users are doing, so we are skipping that part. Another thing in key derivation for PKI is key generation, where the key is never stored. This is the type of system that I implemented for testing. So what I did, the traits that I chosen were fingerprint and iris. The fusion method is feature level fusion. I used the fuzzy extractor to extract the key from the biometric data, and the standard Java RSA implementation. I'm not going to put any math there, no worries, just a simple explanation. A fuzzy extractor needs to extract the key from a noisy input. And then if you present the same, let me give you a definition. A fingerprint or any other type of biometrics, basically it's a noisy input. Every time you present sample 1, when you present sample 2, the image is not the same, it's a little bit different. So that's why it's very important to have a fuzzy extractor that will extract the same key from 2 noisy inputs that are quite the same but not the same. You understand? They're similar. Now, I extracted the key from the biometrics and then used it as seed for RSA. So nothing changes in the RSA implementation. Only the seed, the biometrics is used as seed for RSA. For testing, I use the testing of from fingerprints and iris databases. It's from the Chinese Academy of Sciences. If you are interested, you can have access to these databases, but you need to register as researchers. You just need to give your name because they are quite worried about, they don't want everybody to use these databases. They want to know who has access to them. The Academy had 2 types of fingerprints from users, with cooperation and without cooperation. No worries, they didn't chop any fingerprints. Basically, the ones without cooperation, they were taken from, let's say, I touched the surface or something. So they basically make the user touch some surfaces and then they took the fingerprints from that. These are some images. So we have an original fingerprint, a fake iris, a spoof fingerprint, like a fake fingerprint, an original iris, and a spoofed iris. How are the tests being done? So we have the original biometric, and we extract the key. Then the spoof biometrics, and we extract the key. If the keys are the same, means that we obtain what we needed. And basically, we will also have the private keys. So the test results. I need to define the Hamming distance. Basically says how different are the 2 keys. The noisy key compared to the original key. If the Hamming distance is 0, means they're the same. Here we have set 1, and here we have set 2, and the first test is only for fingerprint. Now, when we have a key of 110 bits, the results are troubling because you see we obtained 231 success rates from 365 tests. And in the second set, it was 193 success rate from 220 results. So that's about, for set 1, it's about 65% success rate, and this is about 87% rate. Now you say, okay, but if we have a bigger key size, for a bigger key size, the last one, 496, yes, the success rate drops. We will have a success rate of 25% for set 1 and about 35% for set 2. And you say, okay, that's good. No, it's not. It means 1 in 4 attempts is successful. If we have that for a password, I think we will be packing and we'll be done with security. Because 1 in 4 attempts for a password, that is bad. Now, if we test the same system for iris, we see the trend. Because iris, it's harder to fake. We only had 2 success rates here, only 2 two success sets. Okay, but the question that I asked was, okay, if we use multi-biometrics, do we have more security with that? This is my sneaky notations, right? Okay, very sneaky. Original fingerprint, original iris. Original fingerprint, fake iris. So what I did, I compared the original samples with fake ones. Well, this looks terrible, so I'm not going to insist. But the thing is like this, it's a trend. Whenever the iris biometrics is used, the iris sample, it's leading. So basically, if we only use iris, we will have the same results as using both multi-biometrics. It doesn't matter. The same conclusion was discovered by researchers to be true for authentication in case of using multi-biometrics. If you use them for authentication, you also have only the hardest biometrics that will lead to say it like that. Well, what are the major issues with the current system? The current system, the current PKI without, let's say, biometrics. First, if we lose our certificate, sometimes it can be undetectable because people don't know what they did with their token. Most people are not aware of it. Sometimes, if we're talking about big corporations, they will keep it a secret. It has happened. We've seen it before. Then there is a latency in which we will get notified that something has happened. And most of the times, we will not know the damages that were made. We cannot know that. Now, the proposed system, the beauty of it is that the key is never stored. So there is nothing that we need to take care of, which is great. But another problem with the proposed system is that the problem lies at the smartphone level, also with the users. Why is that? We could also tell the users that, okay, let's use a nice sensor, a military-grade sensor for biometrics. But what would be the point? I mean, you cannot make the user carry the sensor with him. That's not feasible. No one will carry another sensor with them. Then we have the smartphone application security. Let's say that users, we know that they install everything on their phones. They do not check permissions. I made a small test. I downloaded a flashlight application. I was looking for a flashlight application. I was out of the curiosity. I look in the App Store. I'm talking about an Android device. And I swear from 10 applications, like 4 of them were requesting root permissions for a flashlight application. Okay, the most you should ask is for the camera permissions or camera and microphone if you have an older smartphone, because those two permissions were grouped together. But to ask for root permission for a flashlight, that's something very weird happening with that app. And I checked the app and it had thousands of downloads, just to make sure. So if the user installs, I don't know, something, an application that's malicious, it will certainly interfere with the PKI one, even if you try to secure it. Now, liveliness detection, it's a problem because no smartphone vendor will introduce that because it's costly. And second, smartphones, the sensors in the smartphones are not made to be the best. Lots of people are arguing that, well, you know, authentication based with fingerprint in smartphone is not that reliable. Yeah, but it's not meant to be. It's meant to be easy to use. Because if you make something, you put the threshold very high, and then you get lots of rejections, you will have a problem because you use your smartphone, you unlock it 10 times a day. I don't know, sorry, 1,000 times a day. And if in that 1,000 times you will get, I don't know, 100 rejections, you won't use that fingerprint sensor. So that's why on the fingerprint, on the phone, the fingerprint, the threshold for success is very low. And they do that intentionally. So that's why.
What does low mean in terms of percentage? I'm curious.
I don't have any statistics, so I don't want to, but I think I've seen even another user that managed to unlock my phone and his fingerprint. So I don't know the statistics, so I don't want to say. But I'm not sure it's that great. You have. There's something funny regarding that. There was, I don't know which smartphone, it was in the news like a few months ago. So the smartphone, the face recognition didn't work for Chinese. Yeah, I know it's a cliche, but apparently it was true. There were some Chinese people, like girls, that put their faces and it unlocked every one of them. So I was like, okay. Yeah, I was like, okay. It's a little bit biased, but okay, let's move on. So yeah. The other problems with the security might be which biometrics to use. There is no good answer to this, like whichever is convenient, why should we use that, or because every biometrics has its pros and cons. Then which fusion methods to use also is the same answer. The no access to private key problem in security, why do I mention it, is because, okay, we do not store the private key, but at some point in time, we will have the private key in memory because we need to generate it, right? And to compare, to sign or to decrypt with it. So you must be very careful what's happening with that private key in memory. And I want to give you an example. This happened like 7 years ago, I think. So it's quite, it's called the cold boot attack. I'm pretty sure you heard of them. So some researchers, they so they had some laptops with the keychain, let's say the Apple keychain and the keys stored in the memory. They just shut down the laptop. They didn't shut it down, they just closed it. And then they removed the memory very quickly, the RAM. And then they put the RAM in a special device, and they were able to read all the keys. That is called the cold boot attack. And apparently it's still successful today. We're not even going to the problems with the chips that have, you know about the recent debacle with Cisco? The United States government discovered that someone has put another chip on the motherboard of all the Cisco routers, and they didn't know when that chip was put there, how long ago, so on and so forth. Small problems, actually, you know.
That chip was spying the US spy agencies.
Yeah, I know, because that chip was made specifically for them. Only the hardware delivered to the US spy agency had that chip. The commercial one didn't, so yeah. Now, this type of problems are called supply chain attacks, and they're very hard to spot. Now, to answer the questions. No, we shouldn't think that using using multi-biometrics confers more security, because it doesn't. Is biometric key derivation safe in the context of spoofing? No. And the most let's say, troublesome problem for this type of system is a smartphone level. Why am I insisting on this? I have seen a trend of people adopting biometrics just because it's fun, it's trendy, it's cool, and they think it's safe. Actually, we might end up getting less secure if we don't know how to implement biometrics. As an example, I heard that Japan is rolling out a system as we speak for the foreign visitors to sign transactions with their fingerprint or something like that. I'm like, oh, come on, people, no. Because I'm pretty sure they haven't thought it over. Yeah, I know. Let me tell you what happened when I arrived in Hong Kong my first week. I went to a restaurant. I gave them my card to pay for, and they leave with it. And I was the European, like, what are you doing with my card? It is normal there to get your credit card and live with it and just swipe it because it doesn't require PIN. And then they live back. They're, at least in Hong Kong, they're very trusty. And if you want to start a tap, you go to a bar, you leave them your credit card, and you leave it there until you leave to start a tap. People are very trusty in Asia. That's not okay. Okay, some conclusions. So I think implementing this type of system would be a mistake if we don't take adequate security measures. And we can retrieve the key with good fake biometrics. Last trend in faking biometrics, and apparently it's very, very successful, it's using 3D printing to print fake biometrics. And that's so cool. And can I say this? I plan on, I wanted to do a workshop here for how to fake biometrics. If you are interested, let me know. And I will bring the material so we can do a workshop on faking biometrics. Yeah. Well, I need to go. My company has an audit in States in September, so after that, probably October or November. So. And I need to purchase the materials. We'll do art, you know, like molding our fingerprints and stuff like that. Okay, if you can contact me, laviniadinka@Tradeshift or laviniadinka@Gmail, and you can find me on LinkedIn. And now, questions or, I don't know, remarks?
I would like to have you ask questions into the microphone so you can be heard on the stream. That's why I stopped you when you were shouting in the room, because people can't hear you on the stream. So, any questions?
Okay, so you began your presentation by showing us some attack surfaces that were not, I mean, are not really related to biometrics. I mean, could biometrics help us, for example, secure a website, or because there we have key pairs which can be, of course, attacked, but you cannot. I mean, you cannot use biometrics to generate a key.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is true. I was thinking of the PKI system for like users, considering that every, let's say, economy wants to do the AID thing. EU has Project Stork. India has started doing it, and there are like 100 million people. So that's
okay,
why.
I understand. Okay. Yes.
Because, yeah, you're right. I think that servers are way better of managing keys than people. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Any other questions? If not, we can take a quick stream question. Somebody was asking on the stream, more exactly Ovidiu. Has anyone in real life deployments in the real world tested using two biometrics and fusing them and using that as their private key?
Not in the real life. There are researchers that did it. I'm not the first one. So yeah, there are researchers that have done this. Excuse me?
Clear system. What about
Excuse me.
clear transport system? What do you mean by that?
Let me give you the microphone and you can tell us about it.
On the American Airlines and European Airlines, there is a quicker path to the plane. That is the clear system, using, I guess since 15 years ago, fingerprint and iris. So,
And facial, actually.
I mean.
Yeah, but
what
that's not
more do you
PKI.
want to know? I mean.
Yeah, but that's not PKI. She asked, the questions was related to PKI, not to authentication, to see the user. The question in the stream was related to PKI.
Yeah, so there's a system, there's a difference between replacing the private key with this fusion and just using this fusion for the entire process
And yes,
of
what
authentication.
you are saying is very interesting. And what is more interesting is what I think the Singapore airport did. They track you in the airport by face recognition, and they give you signals where you need to go. I don't know if that's creepy or helpful. I think it's both. So basically, they track you and they say, okay, you need to go to change this.
You pay for that.
Yes, that's true, but they can do it.
Are there any more questions? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm very interested to hear what are your future research points that you want to reach in the near future.
Well, I want to buy a ProSat 3D printing to start doing printing fingerprints. I haven't bought it yet, but that will be cool. So that's my next project, to buy the 3D printer, play with it, and then print some fake fingerprints and see how that goes.
Maybe you're gonna make a workshop with.
Well, that will be next year because I plan on buying it at the end of this year.
So okay, just keep us posted, please.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Let us know when you do so that I can turn off my fingerprint scanner on my mobile phone. All right, thank you. We'll take a quick break.
Thank you.
And then we'll be back with our second talk.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for taking your seats and your full cooperation. If you are still having doubts about how much it's worth to take your seat, just know that there's pizza at the end. So kindly be seated so we can continue. Next up, our second talk is Miriam. Here goes. Chihodariu? All right. She's interested in privacy laws and debates. She dabbles in security, gaming, and e-commerce and GDPR, which I have her written consent to say, just so you know. In her spare time, she bakes and geeks out over superhero movies. So without further ado, here is Miriam.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me well? I can't tell from over here, acoustically speaking. Okay. I am very glad that I had this awesome presentation right before mine that got everyone up to speed with the trouble which can be encountered in the way we encrypt biometrics, because that's precisely one of the major points I will also touch upon. So if she was able to demonstrate technically why biometrics is not a good idea, that's perfect. Half of my work is done. So, probably the best known law on the use of private data to date, for laymen at least, is GDPR. Like almost everyone has heard of it since its enforcement last year, exactly 1 year ago. Everyone started to be panicky. Everyone who had a business, like an online store or no matter how small of a business, everyone was like, oh my God, we need to implement GDPR. Are we implementing it correctly? And so on. What happened before this was that businesses, and I know this because I was also a consultant for a lot of them when they were setting up, especially in my e-commerce work, when they were setting up shop, they were like, okay, so let's collect this data, and I was like, but you only need this to send an invoice. Why do you need to ask them this and this also? Like, I don't know, do you plan to do something with it? Like maybe ask them about their favorite color so you can personalize the newsletter somehow? Oh no, but maybe we'll need it later. Like ask them their mother's maiden name while you're at it. I was like, but you know, it's not cool, but whatever. There was no law forbidding it, so they did it just because you never know when you might need it. And right now, as I will go into details over, the state authorities, which are not regulated as businesses started to be, the state authorities are currently in a similar Wild West phase in which, hey, let's just gather all data now and we'll see later what for. Because as users became more aware of the dangers which can be derived from the misuse of their private data, and hey, who are we handing this over to and what are they going to do with it, and data breaches and everything, the state authorities had the means to impose to businesses a regulation framework. But for the state authorities, no one actually thought about this because they just thought, oh, it's normal, you know, like I have my birth certificate and my personal ID issued by the state. Of course, the state is supposed to know everything about me. I am their citizen after all, and I need this personal identification when I travel. But now, with the emergence of new technologies like biometrics, which can collect new forms of data about you, which no one previously had access to, now there's this little battle between the state authorities and citizens over what can be collected and what for. This is an unprecedented situation, so various countries have various ways of responding to it. We will go over the the most vocal debates and crises which are currently ongoing, and see what this is about. So, basically, while we're okay, apparently, as the general public, to use biometrics, even though it's hugely unsafe, as my colleague has previously shown, we're okay to use this for like cutesy stuff. Oh, I can log into my phone scanning my iris. How cool, let's try this. Or, oh, I can just use my fingerprint, or I can go into my favorite bar and they will scan my face and recognize me and bring me my favorite drink. Cool, let's do that. Sure, I will sign any agreement. So apparently users are not very concerned for their security and privacy when it's about applications which seem user positive, but they are very, very concerned in some states. I will get to that soon. In some, they are not. They are very concerned about the state having access to this data. There are lots of protests which are explicitly using dystopian metaphors, especially with the facial recognition software, which is like the most heated thing users are upset about, citizens are upset about. And they, I don't know, they tend to go there. It's probably also a cultural thing, because our imagination regarding future developments has been